Quick disclaimer before you listen. The World's Okayest Medic Podcast is an educational and commentary platform produced and recorded by me. What we say on here is not endorsed by any of our employers, and we are not speaking on behalf of our employers. Our commentary is our own. Finally, remember to follow your local protocols. First off, YouTube watchers, check out the volume of my hair. I mean, it's got some volume. I mean, if you've seen my two brothers, they're tragically afflicted with male pattern baldness. I mean, I definitely have a receding hairline. And listeners on Spotify or Apple, you can't see this, but I'm like staring and judging at my receding hairline into the camera. But yeah, I look like I'm from a Vidal Sassoon commercial. Wild. All right, this is going to be kind of a niche episode. Some people may not give two craps about this topic. That is fine. If you don't want to listen to it, no offense, fine. I don't blame you if you don't want to. This podcast is now 5 years old, over 5 years old. If you told me when I started out doing the podcast that I would be an Instagram, quote unquote, influencer of sorts, I would have laughed out loud and told you, no way. But alas, here I am. I feel a high degree of cringe calling myself that. I'm a 42-year-old father of three, but the reality is that is what I have become. I know that I am indeed an influencer because I have rocked some foundations and I've poked some bears, and the bears have come out of their cave and they have been very angry. I was recently ball tapped by one of my bosses at one of my jobs because of some content that I did and that I put out, and it was valid. I'll give my boss that. And kudos to my boss. Handled it like a true professional. Yeah, I do. I have become an influencer, as cringe as it is for me to say that. I've made a lot of friends. I've made some enemies along the way. And I've been thinking a lot about these topics. So this is a weird topic to talk about in what is a faux med podcast, but I do as much commentary as I do education stuff. But as you know, this podcast often serves as a selfish mental dump for me. And I have been thinking about a lot of things related to the content creation and podcast biz. And I've been talking about this kind of stuff with some other content creators lately. So all of this stuff is fresh in my mind and it's swirling through my cerebral cortex, especially because I busted somebody stealing, straight up plagiarizing my stuff. We'll get more to that soon. So that is why this has all been fresh in my mind. So I wrote this podcast, getting to the point. I know I'm talking too much. I wrote this podcast tonight. I went to pick up dinner for my family. And on the way, I was thinking, you know what? I'm not going to post it. I'm just not going to record it. I thought maybe some people would find it interesting, but I thought, who cares about this stuff? And honestly, some of it is going to be what some would consider to be a little inflammatory and ranty. I do get told sometimes I'm too angry. Please don't mistake passion for anger. Maybe I'm a little bit oversensitive today about hurting people's feelings because I have the entire 911 dispatcher community right now standing outside of my house with torches and pitchforks because they're angry with the reels that I posted yesterday and today. But you know what? I decided, fuck it. I'm going to record this episode and I'm going to post it because I think it needs to be said. So here goes. From time to time, I get approached by somebody, an EMS provider, who wants to start a podcast or become a content creator. And I think you should do it. There are people who are very territorial, who don't like newcomers. They go with their claws out and they get nasty. And it's like a grown-up episode of Mean Girls. No, I think we need different voices. I started this podcast because I was sick of hearing the same old people having to say. I am well aware that I am now part of that same old crowd who has a podcast. I try to keep things diverse, but if you want to do content, I think you should jump in and do it. It's a great way to challenge yourself, and we need diverse and different voices to be heard. But the term content creator, I feel like the term is the new age entrepreneur. Like, it sounds good. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a content creator. Like, it sounds good, but really, what do you do? Like, what does that mean? So, first off, and some advice to the budding content creators, if you want to do it and you want to do it successfully, it's a freaking ton of work. A ton. Recording is the easy part. That is simple. Editing can be very tedious, but there are great programs you can use. I recommend Descript. Haney turned me on to Descript. It has been a game changer. It makes my workflow light years more efficient and faster. I am not exaggerating when I say that making a YouTube video or a reel for me was like a 5-hour project. And now that I have Descript, it's 1,000 times faster. And frankly, the end result is better. So recording is easy, editing tedious, but manageable once you get the hang of it. You have the right software and you get your flow down. But it is the research and the attention to detail that I find to be enormously taxing, because I feel a duty to you to get my stuff as accurate and up-to-date and well-researched as I can. That involves reading studies. That involves reading the whole study, not just the abstract. That involves reading follow-up studies, follow-up papers, letters to the editor, responses to those letters to the editors, going through the reference list that's cited in those studies, reading blog posts, because I want to get things right. Any lazy person can read 2 sentences in an abstract and repost it with this. I don't want to be like that. Add to that laborious task the arduousness of being consistent with posting content and then responding to questions and DMs. It is a ton of work, a ton. This whole content creation, podcast, influencer thing is another full-time job. I am dead serious when I say that, and I don't get paid to do it. Now, I'm not saying that I am perfect. I'm not saying I'm the model you should follow. I don't know if you would want to. I don't know who would follow me, but I'm no role model. I am tragically flawed. I am plagued with imposter syndrome. And I realize that I am not everyone's cup of tea. I have always been the kind of person that people either really seem to like or that people despise, and I'm okay with that. I will say, however, that starting the podcast and the social media and it growing to what it has become has thrown kerosene onto all of those feelings of imposter syndrome, stress, blah, blah, blah. You've heard me say that before. Some days I sit back like a kid who was playing with fire and the fire got bigger than I anticipated, gets out of my span of control, and I sit there wide-eyed, teeth clenched, with a surprised and scared grin on my face, and I'm like, I often get asked, what are your goals with the podcast? What do you want to do with it? I've gone many different directions. I've tried a few different things. I've certainly evolved. I have considered monetizing it. I used to be dead opposed to it, but then I kind of came up with the philosophy that if a big corporation wants to give me money, like, sure, I'll take their money. But I haven't really done the monetizing thing. I've stuck my toes into the sponsorship pool to test the waters. And I don't particularly like the feel of the water, so I have thus avoided it largely. As you know, I do have affiliate partnerships with a couple of brands so that we all benefit. I drive business to the company. You, the consumer, get a discount if you buy something, and I get a cut of what you buy. Now, that is fun and all, but that's about the extent of it. Calling that monetizing the podcast is a big stretch. Not even a stretch, like an over contortion. If you buy a $50 pair of sunglasses from Frontline Optics using code OKMedic and I get $7 from it, I'm not necessarily running to the bank maniacally laughing along the way. I have come to realize that I don't think I really want sponsorships, and I am pretty damn sure that nobody wants to sponsor me. Now, I had mentioned that Zoll had approached me months ago about sponsoring the podcast. They gave me a preliminary proposal of an offer to for a sum of money to say a spiel each podcast about their monitor, which I absolutely do think is a great product. I maintain that the Zoll X Series is currently the best monitor on the market. I'm excited to see the new monitor that they're developing, but I got ghosted by Zoll. Maybe it's because they heard some of my past statements that I don't like their vent. I think in one episode I compared their Z vent to buying a Yugo when for $2,000 more, you can get like a Hamilton Maserati. In the words of Doja Cat, oops, I said what I said. But you know what? I don't care. It's water under the bridge. I am too outspoken. I understand that. That's something that I embrace. I would say something I have to deal with, but I embrace it. Maybe I'm a little too controversial, and I think that's why I haven't gotten hit up by many businesses interested in sponsoring the podcast. I have poked some bears that have caused some malcontent among the establishment, in quotes, if you will. And frankly, that brings me happiness, even if it has caused the profitability of this podcast and social media platform to substantially decline. And that's fine, because I am not in this for the money. Yes, I do make some money doing lectures. People hit me up and say, hey, will you do a lecture for our paramedic program? Will you do a lecture for this conference? Yeah. You want to pay me to come out and do a lecture? Absolutely. Happy to do it. Yes, I have the Patreon. Thank you so much to the people who subscribe. It really does help. And please know that the money that I get from the Patreon, I put right back into the podcast. I just paid what I consider a way too expensive renewal fee and taxes on the LLC that I have that is associated with the podcast. And without your support, I would have been looking at open shifts to see what I could pick up for some overtime, especially because we need a new roof. So my Riverside subscription that I use to record podcasts with guests, that's not cheap. That's due to be renewed soon. Same with my Canva subscription. So that kind of support from you, just $3 a month, it goes a very long way. So really, truly thank you so much for that. The point is that I'm not raking in the dough doing this. There are people who do make a lot of money off of content creation, and that is great for them. I'm happy for them. I am an evil American capitalist, and I support it. The risk that comes with that, however, is that I see people make a deal with the devil, and that can lead to them becoming a modern-day court jester. Hear me out. You make content. It surges in popularity. You get likes, you get clicks, shares, hits of dopamine, which is another addiction. But then you start to make money. Maybe you're getting sponsorships. Maybe you're starting to make money from all the views and engagements you are getting on TikTok, and much less so meta platforms like Instagram and Facebook. There is also, of course, YouTube, which certainly monetizes. Did you know that I am up to like a 15-cent earnings payout on my YouTube channel? I am truly making it big. So drinks on me when we meet up. There is actually quite a substantial bit of earnings potential with TikTok. But for me, TikTok can go fuck itself. It is an intellectual sinkhole. I don't ever talk politics. You know, that's a rule for the podcast. And I don't know if this counts as talking politics, but after I got active on the TikToks and saw what people were commenting on my stuff and other content creators' stuff, and then add to that video after video of EMS providers and nurses, even doctors, like that EMS fellow or resident in Pittsburgh that did that cringe reel. But video after video of EMS providers cheapening the profession by singing into a suction catheter or twerking on a stretcher or dramatically staring into a mirror, shaking their head with a 1,000-yard stare. Sarah McLachlan's In the Arms of an Angel is playing in the background while I Lost a Patient Today is scrolling across the screen. I have bought into the theory that TikTok is indeed a long-term, deep Chinese intelligence project, a psyop to make Americans dumber, and it is working. I have said time and again that the comment section on my Instagram is like an Ivy League panel discussion compared to the drivel that you see on TikTok. Yeah, I probably could really start to make some legit money, like pay my mortgage every month kind of money, if I really worked hard on the TikTok and I was as attentive to it as I am to Instagram and now to my YouTube channel. But fuck it. I haven't uploaded anything to TikTok since probably around Christmas, and I haven't even logged in and scrolled on TikTok since then. Some people occasionally send me a TikTok reel to watch. I'll click on that and watch it, but I'm not on there doom scrolling. So back to the content creation, making money thing. You can make a lot of money on TikTok. You can make money on social media, etc. So here's the deal with the devil. A person makes content. It gets traction. Money starts pouring in. Content creator sees money pouring in. Light bulb goes off. I can make some serious money doing this. And it becomes like selling drugs. Not that I have ever sold drugs before. But before long, it becomes, this was really easy money, and it still is easy money, but now I just can't stop doing it, and I need to keep finding ways to stay relevant, or the competition is going to outpace me, and even worse for my psyche, because I now identify as my social media persona, some new person might burst onto the scene and steal my thunder. So the result is the proliferation of content creators who devolve into doing literally anything for clicks, likes, and shares because they can't stop, because they are addicted to both the dopamine of being liked on social media and the revenue stream coming in. The end result, in my opinion, is a cheapening of content and a brutal increasing of the cringe factor. And I straight up refuse to do that. My position is that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing at my pace. If you like the content, great. If it helps you out, great. I got 2 messages from this week from people who said that my content helped them pass. One was a CFRN. Congrats, Olivia. And 2 was help pass their paramedic program final. Congrats, Josh. I know it sounds corny, but that truly is better than any payment. So I am glad that the content is helping people out. But also, if you hate the content, that's okay too. And if you want to comment on Instagram how much you hate me and hate the content, which people certainly do, people have definitely made comments like that, feel free to post them from your incel dungeon in your parents' basement. I will read them at my house poolside while my hot wife tans next to me in a bikini. Getting back on track, consistency key. So budding content creators, if you want to stay relevant, you have to be consistent with your output of content. You can't just post 3 or 4 times a week and then do nothing for 6 weeks. You have to be consistent to get picked up in the algorithm. I have evolved to putting out 1 or 2 pieces of content a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. Whether it's a podcast or a reel or an Instagram graphic, or I do an Instagram live, a pitfall that I have seen from people who fail at doing content creation, for lack of a better term. Actually, that is quite an appropriate term. They jump into the content creation game. They may have really good content. They post stuff for a week or 2, and then they disappear. You talk to them and you say, what the hell happened? They said, well, I was posting stuff, but it wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't getting any traction. Well, no shit. It takes time. It took like 2 or 3 years before I broke 1,000 followers. I think it was more than a year before I broke like 200 or 300. You must be persistent and consistent. Your goal should be to consistently be putting out quality content. Focus on the quality, not on the shiny ball of how many likes, shares, and views it's getting. If it's good, it will catch on. Even then, that takes time. And it takes time for you to evolve as a content creator. You don't become a good paramedic overnight. You don't become a conditioned athlete overnight. You don't become a good parent overnight. Same goes for being a content creator. It's like anything else. Hard work, consistency, determination, learning from failures, blah, blah, blah. But while consistency is key, so is moderation. And this is where we tie in the people who are stuck in the, I must keep creating content to be relevant and keep my dopamine, the likes, and thus my sense of self-worth and income stream a-flowing. They keep making content. They make reel after reel after reel after reel after reel after reel. And after a while, they are to the point where the person scrolling social media sees them. They automatically recoil and they say internally, maybe even out loud, oh my God, I'm so fucking sick of this person. And then they flick their thumb and go to the next reel, video, social media post, what have you. So if you want to be a content creator, don't turn into a cringe court jester because you are desperate for likes, shares, and income. Have some friggin' self-respect. Next, it is incumbent upon the consumer to discern who they are going to listen to for content and to decide whether that person knows what they are talking about or not. I am not your grandfather's educator who shuns modern technology and new and innovative ways of doing things. I truly believe in the value of social media, including short reels. I have said before, and I'll say it again, I learn more in a 2 or 3 minute Haney Malamat reel than I do in most 30 to 45-minute conference lectures. There truly is value in good content. And not just for education, but for entertainment also. I mean, who doesn't love fire memes? Shout out to 6 Inches at the Teeth. I think they're the best EMS meme game in the business. There's a lot of people who are out there making content who don't know what the hell they are talking about. And I am not saying that to stand on a mountaintop and brag that I am the one who knows all and that I know what I'm talking about. I think I do, generally as far as the content that I put out, EMS related content. And when I put out educational material, I am confident that it is well researched and supported by the most up-to-date information because I spent hours researching it. That's not an exaggeration. And if I am ever wrong, and I have been wrong before, you will let me know. The internet always lets me know. You have before. Thank you. And I will fix it. And I will publicly admit, hey, I screwed that up. I posted this. I was wrong. Or I didn't see that there was more up-to-date information. So thank you for sending it to me. As valuable as a short educational reel may be, the consumer must confirm. And by confirming, use the short reel as a springboard to do more research. Don't just take my word for what I'm saying. Let's use an example. I do a reel that says that epi sucks in cardiac arrest. Confirm for yourself. Do the research. Watch the reel. Check the references that I always include because not doing so is unethical and plagiarism. And go read the information for yourself and come up with the position. Hey, I think Mike's right. He's really onto something here. Or Mike is an idiot and he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. I see content creators who put out reels that I think are probably well-intentioned, but knowingly or unknowingly to the creator, they are preying upon impressionable minds that probably aren't going to be all that discerning or inquisitively skeptical. There's one person who repeatedly puts out reels with definitive statements like, we should be doing this now, or we must stop doing this. And then they provide quote unquote evidence. And when they provide quote unquote evidence to support their position, they are unwittingly sharing that their digestion, interpretation, and knowledge of the evidence and the position that they have taken based upon that evidence is because they read an abstract, and that's it. Somebody put some content out on one position in particular that I happen to know quite a lot about. And when I heard this person dropping studies and stats from these studies, my thought was, oh, you abstract reading MFer, because if you read the papers in their entirety, you outlined the papers, you took notes, you looked not just at the stats or at the abstract conclusion, but you also look at the limitations and the circumstances and the raw numbers versus the numbers that were output in the statistical analysis. And you look at the study model, the procedure used. You know that a couple of these slam dunk stats that led you to say, by George, we must stop doing this, came from studies that have wider holes than that Bonnie Blue that you hear about all the time. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that I see content creators whose output has outpaced their experience and knowledge. I think that's a really nice way of putting it, because I have heard other people say it in a much nastier way. You know who is not like that, not a charlatan, is the Nurse Dose podcast. I don't personally know him. Gwenny turned me on to him. He is amazing. Follow him. He's a cardiac ICU nurse. The guy knows what he's talking about. That is a fact. If he puts out hemodynamic monitoring content, you know it's good, because this is what this guy does for a living, and he's good at it, and it shows. I have learned a lot from him. He knows the material, and you know that he does because he can explain it in simple terms that engage the viewer. That's the type of content creator that you want to follow. So let's use his expertise on cardiology to pivot to me making my point. I'm a critical care paramedic. I'm a flight paramedic. I transfer cardiac ICU patients. I do indeed. I know the basics of hemodynamic monitoring. Yes, I have taught the flight medical provider course. Part of that is teaching the basics of hemodynamic monitoring, like caveman fundamentals of hemodynamic monitoring. You're not going to see me put out Instagram, social media, podcast content on hemodynamic monitoring. Like, here's a cardiac index and here's what you should do with it. And here's how to employ it in practice, because straight up, I don't use it. I'm not an expert. I transport what, like 2 Swan-Ganz catheters a year, maybe. And all I'm really doing is monitoring the waveforms on the monitor during transport to make sure that the tip doesn't migrate into the right ventricle. That's pretty much it. I know just enough about hemodynamic monitoring to get through a transport, but hell if I'm going to stand in front of a camera and lecture the masses on a cardiac index or a wedge pressure or what it means if your left ventricular end diastolic pressure is elevated, that would make me a charlatan. If I want highly specialized content like that, I'm going to go to the Nurse Dose podcast, or I'm going to go to Melody RT, true experts sharing their expertise and wisdom via social media. I cannot say the same for others, because I do see some content where I think to myself when I watch the reel, you don't realize how stupid you look because you obviously are completely unaware of what you don't know. Just because somebody has a social media account that has 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, or that there are 15,000 glam shots of them in a flight suit with their hair extensions billowing out from under their helmet, does not mean that they know what the hell they are talking about. And I see some of these people being paraded around the conference circuit like they're some sage of wisdom. And I have to think, really? To quote comedian Andrew Dice Clay, like, come on, fellas, wake up and smell the toast. I don't want to come across that I'm being the old man telling the younger people to get off my lawn. I'm not shitting on the younger people. Younger providers who are on social media providing education, that's a good thing, I think. That's fine. I follow a few of them. I have personally gotten to know a few, and they're great people. I've had a couple on my podcast. They definitely have their place. They provide good contributions. They connect with the younger generation of EMS providers, and that is no small thing. Those are the future leaders of EMS. Big deal. I do not think that being a 2-year medic, or however young you may be, automatically means that you should shut up, know your place, and not make content. There are people who do say that. I don't agree with that blanket statement. Like, he looks like he's 12. Who the hell is he to tell a 30-year medic how to do my job? I do understand the sentiment, but there's plenty of 30-year medics who should never be allowed to communicate so much into an intercom at a Burger King drive-thru, let alone have a social media platform. So I ask my older and more experienced counterparts to please have some grace and understand that it is a different generation. And I think some of those young content creators really connect with our younger people. And I truly think that there is a lot of value in that. That being said, personally me, see Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde here on the podcast tonight, I'm going to have a very critical and frankly judgmental eye when I'm watching someone who has been an EMS provider for all of 1 year put out content teaching the finer points of trauma resuscitation, or how you should sedate the patient with acute dangerous agitation, because what the hell do you know? You haven't done it enough. You may understand the foundational concepts and you may be able to regurgitate the best practices that you've read or heard someone else lecture before, but I'd be hard pressed to listen to you tell me how I should be responding to calls and treating patients, because simply you haven't done it in a manner that I don't want to say gives you no credibility, that I think might be kind of harsh, might be accurate for some, but harsh. I think the better way to put it is that you haven't done it in a meaningful manner that gives you any weight or gravitas. There's a lot of impeachability. So I guess that's another lesson for people who want to get into podcasting or social media content. You have to know your place. I'm all about pushing the line, challenging norms, moving the chains down the field, and throwing up a middle finger when someone from the establishment in quotes, says, hey, you can't do that. That's another part of how the whole podcast started. But please, know your place. Don't make a fool out of yourself by lecturing or teaching something that you don't know or that you're not familiar with. As I have always said, if you've got it, flaunt it. If you know about something and you want to share your knowledge, please do. That's the whole point of this. We need that knowledge to be out there. If you want to share your experience or you want to let the world know how you're feeling about a particular issue or call, patient encounter, experience at work, greater issue in the profession, please, please do. I find that stuff really resonates with people. It sparks needed and important discussions, and it truly does have influence. I have some big movers and shakers who reach out to me and they say, hey, dude, I will never come on to your freaking podcast because of my position, but keep doing what you're doing because it's making a difference. There really is value in doing what we do. And if you think you have something to contribute, please jump in and do it. But do ask yourself, if I wasn't me, would I listen to me opine or lecture on this? The last thing that I want to say is that there frankly are some scumbags out there putting out content. There are ones who just want their name out there. They want the recognition and the accolades, and they don't want to do the work. Going back to the beginning, I find creating content to be very challenging and time consuming. There are some who use AI to generate content and they put their name on it like they penned it. I find that to be one of the most dishonest and lazy things that someone who proclaims to be an EMS educator can do. A couple of people come to mind. If you listened to the last podcast, you heard that someone swiped my content a couple of weeks ago and posted it nearly verbatim and then backtracked and gave me a bullshit story as an excuse that did not pan out when I investigated it and I confronted them about it. Now, I didn't mention this guy's name. That's your gift, by the way. But after I put out the podcast and I talked about it, within 12 hours, I had 3 people message me and say, hey, was it this guy? And yes, they were right. Within a couple of days, I had about 10 messages that were, let me guess, it's this guy. Everyone was spot on accurate. That tells me that people aren't stupid. They can tell when you're stealing content. They can tell when you're using AI to generate content. One content creator who has been vetted and has been on the podcast and is a friend of the podcast recently told me about an interaction they had with this guy. They did some work for him, content creation work or like content checking work. They were told that they were going to get paid and they never received the payment. So that's some of the types of personalities and caliber of human that you're dealing with out there. So be wary, be discerning, be judgmental, be skeptical. There are some lazy fucks out there who just want to be out there in public and get the dopamine hits, the likes and shares. Really what it is they want to be liked. They want to be valued. They want notoriety. They're not willing to do the work. So they resort to stealing people's content and to using AI because they're too lazy and or stupid to produce it themselves. They want to be seen as leaders, but they lack the necessary charisma and innovation, and thus couldn't lead a cat to chase a stuffed mouse on a string. To those people, we are on to you. I thought I was pretty clever being the one to do this. I was putting this one particular person's content, I was cutting and pasting it and putting it into an AI detector. And I found out that I'm not alone. I'm one of 3 people that I know of that has been doing this. And it's not like we've been talking to each other and like this was a plan. Just 3 other people were like, hey, this person's doing AI. And they were putting it into an AI detector because we all smelled a rat and we are all getting the same results. 85%, 90, 95% AI generated. So unlike you, dude, people aren't stupid and people are innovative. They pick right up on that stuff. I guess what I'm saying, end of rant, is that this is, I already said this, another lesson to be discerning when you take in content. So that's the end of my rant. I'm starting to ramble. That's my spiel. I don't know if this was a useful podcast. I don't know if you liked it. I don't know if it was entertaining, insightful, whatever, but that's what I've got. See you later.